and welcome you with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, 18 Hours Daily initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. It's our endeavor, of course, to bring you the most relevant voices for you, the MSME entrepreneur. And today I'm in conversation with B.S. Nagesh. He's the founder of Train and the non-executive vice chairman of Shoppers Stop. Thank you very much for speaking with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow in 18 Hours. Such a pleasure talking with you, sir. Let me start this conversation off by asking you to talk to our viewers in terms of what the synergies are in your mind between large format retailers and small retailers. How do you see them coexisting?
Thank you very much for inviting me on the show, and I'm so happy because this is something which is very, very, very close to my heart. See, if you look at large retailer, we call them large because either of the size or the fact that they have multiple stores in the chain. But honestly, if you ask me, large retailer is also that one retail shop, because 90 to 95% of customers only associate to one shop. So you may say it is a Shoppers Stop chain, but eventually the customer sees only Andheri as a store. So when you look at a large retailer, it is the store which the customer associates to. If you look at a small retailer, it is also the store. I mean, next to your neighbor, you may have 4 kiranas, but for some reason, you'll continue to go to one of them. Okay, if you ask yourself why, I mean, there's a multiple things that happens. So as of today, there are no platforms where a small retailer and a large retailer can collaborate. But there's a lot of platforms where a small retailer learns from the large retailer. In fact, if you ask me, in the last 20 years, the smaller retailers have made more money and more benefit out of learning and participating in the large retailer's activity. So for example, if a hypermarket has a sale and talks of saying one Coke with another Coke free, so first 100 Cokes are bought by the small retailers. So they go back to the store of theirs and they sell the Coke. So they almost make a 30-40% extra margin there. When you look at the deliveries that happen to modern retail, earlier the trucks used to come to small retailers once in a week, because modern retail asks for a delivery every day. Okay, the trucks come and they also drop in for the smaller retailers. So smaller retailers is learning, and adding to his learning, he's making better value of his business. But very few have started collaborating. Although there are now, with the online, offline, small, big, there's a huge opportunity to collaborate.
Okay, so you're saying that there's a lot that small retailers can learn from large retailers. If I could ask you to list for our viewers the top 3 things which you think small retailers should be learning from the larger peers, and also the 3 things that they shouldn't be copying when it comes to the large retailers.
So let me first talk of the strengths of the small retailer. Okay, so if you look at a retailer, I think his biggest strength is he knows his customer well. The second biggest strength is he's very passionate. So he is not understanding the customer as a body, like in a loyalty program, your number is this and your name is this. They know Nagesh personally, they know Shailaja personally, they know my family personally. So that's the second. And the third part of it is they are ones who buy and sell. So when you buy and sell, you know the inventory better. When you look at a large retailer, the buyer is sitting somewhere else and the retailer is sitting somewhere else. That's a distance. Most of the time, because you get large numbers and you have very large attrition, half the time the retail employee does not know the customer by person. So there is no personal touch. So under these circumstances, if you ask me what are the 3 things they should learn from is, one is the technology adoption is a must. So they can't say कि वो बड़ा retailer करता है मैं तो हाथ पर्ची पे काम चला लूँगा. That is not going to work. So that's one. First is the technology. The second part is they have to understand that the employees who work with them, if they are not their family members, also have to have their own life. So they have to take care of the employees more as somebody they want to grow, rather than somebody who's almost become like a bonded laborer and therefore is staying with us. The third is, for some reason, they don't look at the inventory in the same seriousness they should look at it. For example, today there are FSSI rules which have come up. You have expiry dates to look at it. You have old stocks to look at it. So I think they look at profits as profits which has become cash flows, which is sitting in the inventory. I think that's not fair. They have to really concentrate on inventory, because the more you turn the inventory, the more money a retailer makes.
Okay. Lots of interesting points that you raised, Mr. Nagesh. Let me break that down. And the first one, and I want to talk about technology. How crucial is it, in your opinion, for retail chains, no matter how small they are, to be able to use technology? Is it essential?
It is 100% essential. Not because the retailer has to adopt the technology. The consumer is adopting technology. So if my consumer is going to be adopting technology, if she or he wants to be 24/7 connected, then how can I say that I'll not be connected? This is like saying, you speak English, okay, I speak Hindi, we can't communicate. So I will not talk to my English speaking customers. There's no way. You have no option. Either you have somebody who speaks English or you learn how to speak English, or both of us have to learn sign language. So there is no option then to adopt technology. The question is technology very expensive? You'll be surprised that for the smaller retailers, technology in this country has become free. Whereas the larger retailer, the technology has become very expensive, because there are so many startups who are wanting to connect the smaller retailers to the consumer. So if startups are willing to connect the smaller retailers to the consumer, it's almost coming free, and free on a SaaS model. So there's no capital expense. Second is you are only paying what you're using, and many times you're not even paying what you're using. So beautiful opportunity for the small retailers. I think what they have to do is they have to free up their mindset. You know, I meet a lot of small retailers. There's one set of retailers, they say, आप क्या सिखाओगे हमको, हम तो 50 साल से काम कर रहे हैं. There's some small retailers who say कि बहुत सीखने को है, लेकिन इतना कुछ करना कैसे करें. You know, they have issues, but they see as an opportunity. So I think first is we need to get the mindset changed, because there are two things which have become essential, which are happening, nobody can change. The generation of customers for all of us is becoming younger. Second is they are tech savvy. So if you say I'm not going to be not savvy, at least tech available, and I am not going to go away from serving the youngsters, you have no option than to be with them.
Okay, so since the time you've started with Shopper Stop, would you say the technology has been the biggest disruptor?
I would say we used as Shopper Stop technology as its biggest advantage, because very early in the business we brought probably the best technology in the world. Very early in the business we could create a very large loyalty program, and today the loyalty program has become a big asset of the company. So we have always used technology as a big advantage. But what's happened now is technology outside the companies have become big disruptors, or people who are using technology have started disrupting. Now a lot of us in business, including small businesses, say बाहर से disruption हो रहा है. बाहर से disruption कौन कर रहा है? खुदा नहीं कर रहा है, हम जैसे आदमी बंदे ही कर रहे हैं. So if they can do disruption, the question is, do we want the disruption to happen and then react, or can we be part of the disruption? So I would say technology can be a big enabler for growth as well as disruption. Don't wait for disruption to happen. You become the disruptor.
So you were talking earlier about, how you go out and talk to small retailers and tell them, how critical it is to use technology. What advice would you have for our viewers in terms of how to go about making themselves literate when it comes to technology?
So one thing that is happening is the environmental change. If you look at most of the retailers, retail is a very traditional business. It's a very old business, okay? And because our whole ecosystem of societies, our houses, our apartment blocks are made in such a way that the retail as a community has been existing for 20, 30 years, and they will exist for the next 50 years, yeah? They're all in the age group of 50, 55, 60s. Most of them at that point of time did not get a chance to get educated. Most of their children, and I've met a lot of them, are all educated children. So the one thing that's happening very good, and it's a big shift happening in our country, the next generation of the SMEs, the smaller retailers, the MSMEs who are coming up are literate, more educated, with a slightly broader and a wider mindset, and having no fear to adopt technology, because in their personal life they have adopted technology. So if you don't have a youngster who's in the business, then firstly get the mindset that you have no option. If you have to survive, you have to use the technology. That's number one. Second is, you don't have to every time buy technology. I mean, there are models available where you need not invest. You could work on a pay by use. There are models where you could collaborate with other technology players, where they bring in the technology and help you use, and you pay a little commission to that. So open your mindset. Be very clear that without technology you can't survive. Third, participate with collaborative methods with other similar players. It not be competitors. Let me give you an example. Suppose you are on a street. You are running a kirana store. Next to you is a jewelry store. Next to you is a kapde ka dukan. Next to you is a ladies garment. Next to you is a footwear. Next to you is a bag. If 6 people combined together is the same consumer, they would be like a department stores. But in our traditional system, they don't cooperate. Yeah. But if they cooperate, just imagine it's actually a mini department store on the street. So collaboration, cooperation using technology is, I think, going to be the best way to move forward in the future.
Let's take a very quick break, but much more on the other side. While Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and you're watching part 1 of a special conversation with B.S. Nagesh. So far we've spoken about technology as an enterprise solution, as technology that can be used by companies. I also want to talk about technology which is, front-end facing in the sense that it is consumer facing. For example, say mobile wallets, or for example, apps by different retail chains. Do you think those are applications which necessarily maybe small retailers can also look at, and what advice would you have?
Like I said earlier, because the consumer is fully on technology, there is no option than you not being on technology. The only difference in retail is that what you sell is a product or a service. Unless you are able to track the product or a service by using your technology, which is your enterprise technology, you can't serve them. Okay? Let's say that your technology is enabled as far as the enterprise is concerned, whether small or big. Today's consumer is actually looking at shopping for a product or service, or from where she wants to shop much before she starts shopping, either on her own or she's prompted by friend groups or social groups. So at the point when she wants to look for a product, if you are not present, then you are actually out of her radar. So I am not saying you have to be online and e-commerce ready. You have to be content ready. So when I think of you or your product, are you there in my sphere of space, either as a brand or an enabled technology? So, and this is a huge advantage. Earlier the power was only with the big guys. So mobile wallet, to be having an app, if not your app, can you add on with somebody else? Okay, or if you can't even add off, can you be part of that value system? So somebody, a startup guy is saying that I have 1 million customers connected. I'm saying fair enough, when they want to buy garments, please refer to me. So I become a partner, I make 20%, I give you 10, I take 10 back. So being connected to the consumer is important, and from wallet to browsing to content to feedback to service, I think there's no other option than being with the consumer through and through.
I want to just digress very little from talking about technology, and since you were talking about mobile wallets, I want to talk about government regulation. Are you happy with the clarity that has now come in terms of the two-step verification, etc., or do you think there's still a little bit of way for that industry to mature?
You are talking from a payment part of it. See, it's like this, the more simple you make, the easier it is going to be for the customers, because it is not just about what you deliver, it's also about the enabler. So for example, if you look at payment wallets, a lot of hypermarkets and supermarkets in the country are in the basement. Half the basements don't have signals or Wi-Fi. So at the point when you have shopped and you're waiting for your OTP to come, you don't get it. So it has to be made simpler and simpler and simpler. And I met a youngster who said that now he has a technology which is going to use sound waves, so he doesn't require the telecom infrastructure to actually connect with the POS. So I'm saying the new technologies are coming, but it has to be made simpler.
Okay, since you're talking about 4G, is that going to be a big disruptor for the retail industry?
I hope that it is a big enabler, because it would disrupt the other 4G or 3G players if price comes down. But if it is a big enabler, yes, it will be. I'll tell you how. What's happening today is that the consumer is wanting to be connected to their provider, whether it's a product or service, 24/7. The retailer wants to be connected 24/7, but in the whole retail ecosystem, it becomes expensive if you have to really install all these things at the cost that currently it exists. So if tomorrow price comes down, the speed goes up, the bandwidth goes up, I think retailer will find it much easier to operate with the customers. But this I'm talking of the bigger retailer. The smaller retailers will still find it difficult, because it is very difficult for a one-man show with 3 people in a small retailer to do so many things. And that's where I'm very hopeful, because the startup environments are becoming enablers of the small retailer. Don't forget, the small retailers are basically mom-pop shops even today. Okay, one husband, maybe wife is there, maybe son is there, and 3 employees. Most of the employees are not fully educated. So this guy is a buyer, seller, managing director, CEO, accountant, chartered accountant. Unfortunately, he's not the CTO. He's even the CHRO for himself. So this is something which I think the outside ecosystem has to bring in. And I'm very positive, because lots of things are happening.
Okay. I also want to talk about and ask you to tell our viewers about your own belief on how much of sales do you think are going to be driven out of the mobile going forward, and whether you would advise and encourage our viewers to start looking more actively at it.
See, there's one reality and one possibility. Okay. The current reality is that not even 1% to 2% of the business in the current retail world is happening through mobile platform. So if you look at all the current brick and mortar retailers, their contribution is between 1 to 2%. If you look at US, contribution between 10 to 12%. If you look at UK, it is between 15 to 20%. So it should not happen that people get so bothered about this that they stop thinking about the 99 and put the energies on the 1%, and they start losing on the 99 also. So that's one part. That is the reality. What is the possibility? The possibility is that India is going to go faster than any other part of the world in terms of its movement to mobile technology towards use it for shopping. So what happened in US, UK in 20 years, India will happen in 5 to 6 years time. So at the end of 5 to 6 years, if you're not enabled, then you're going to lose a larger number of customers. My estimation is maybe 20-30% will be actually through mobile led, and with the kind of push that's happening with all the brands coming in. So as a retailer, either yourself or through collaboration or through startup technology provider, you have to become enabled. But prepare yourself to say, I'll become enabled over the next 2-3 years. It is just not about technology. It's about technology, preparing yourself to use the technology, preparing yourself to use the technology to make the customer connect and adopt the technology, plus making your 3 employees also technology enabled, because at the end of the day, you will have to go out for lunch, you'll have to go for bio breaks. I mean, somebody else is running the shop. So at that time, your customer cannot be told in today's world that no, Seठ जी 1 घंटे के बाद में आएंगे, उस टाइम आके आप खरीदिएगा. So it is about preparing the whole ecosystem. I think we are slightly far away from preparing the whole ecosystem. But I still we have time, 3 to 5 years to prepare ourselves.
We've been talking about technology all along. I also want to talk about digital. In an age where everyone has an opinion and everyone wants to have an opinion online, what advice would you have for our viewers in terms of building a brand for themselves online?
Let's very clearly accept and understand that MSME is an MSME. Yeah? India as a country, building a brand in a typical theoretical marketing phase is a very, very expensive affair. So you build a brand in a small and medium enterprises through building trust of product and services and transaction. I mean, today, for example, I have not seen Chitle Bandhu advertising all across, but today, if it is Bakarwadi, it is Chitle Bandhu. Okay, I have seen Jumbo Vada Pav advertising, but I have never seen Datta Pav advertising. But everybody who goes to Pune drops down to have his Vada Pav. So to me, the way I would suggest the MSMEs to look at building the brand is not through advertising or not through spending a large amount of money, but ensuring that the customers that they deal with, the product and services becomes a relationship, becomes a brand. So the 2 examples I gave, it is not through brand building as a consequence of brand building, but brand building as a consequence of great product, great service and great relationship. So for MSMEs, I would say start with this. Are you building that relationship with the customers? Are you delivering the best service? Are you there with the customers pre, on and post? Because most small, even the large enterprises are there with the customer till the customer buys. But if you look at it, the satisfaction and the brand relationship gets built post the purchase. When I'm using it, it could happen 1 month, 3 months, 6 months down the line. How many retailers, how many brand owners, how many brands call up, or in your experience have called you to say, ma'am, you bought this 6 months back, I hope everything is going fine.
No one does that.
Almost none. Yeah, only when you have a problem with the brand, then you call up and then somebody, but that time you are in an agitated mood. So best way to build a brand, and there are thousands of brands today in the world, including in India, which have been built purely on the basis of product, service, transaction, relationship. So build through that. Well, if you have more money, then spend a little more. And now social media may be a little cheaper than the other media, but it's becoming expensive. So wanting to build a brand through media could be an expensive affair, but building it through service, product and transaction and relationship is not expensive at all.
So if I can ask you to list in terms of hygiene, the top 2 or 3 do's and don'ts when it comes to trying to build a brand for yourself online, what would it be?
First is know your customer thoroughly. Because if you don't know whom you're going to serve or whom you're serving, then you're building the brand for whom. So I mean, in a modern language, you say know your TG well. Okay, that's the first thing. Second is know what connects them. So ask, if you're a footwear retailer, ask, am I selling a shoe? Am I selling something which will save the women from hurting a soul? Am I selling something which is going to create a look? Am I selling something which is going to be comfort? So if you're selling a shoe, then anybody else can sell a shoe. But if you're selling something which makes her feel good because it saves her from a nail bite, it looks good, you feel good, and others appreciate, then the first thing somebody says, hey, you're wearing a beautiful shoe, you look so good, where did you buy from? You will tell the name. But if it's hurting you but looks good, you still not tell the name because you're cursing the person. So I would say know the customer. That's number one. The second is ensure that you know the ultimate need and the use of the customer for the product or the service. Same thing goes for salon. I mean, you don't go for a haircut. You go because you cut the hair to look better. So I am actually making you beautiful. That's my job. I am not cutting your hair. So if we know the ultimate purpose for which the customer comes in, I think that makes tremendous difference. The third is ensure that the ethos and the values of the organization are all aligned. I as an owner or I as a businessman or I as a manager cannot be thinking one, whereas my team thinks different. So align everybody because customer interacts with not only me but many others. So if you align the team, yes. So TG, ultimate use of the product, aligning the team. I think these are the three musts in my opinion.
Okay, let's talk about the regulatory environment for the retail space. And the biggest one, of course, is GST. How much of a game change is that going to be for the retail industry, and what advice would you have for our viewers in terms of preparing themselves for the rollout?
The parliament has cleared it. It is going to happen. Okay, when could be a question. So as a retailer, you are the last mile of the value chain. So there is no way a retailer can say, I will not participate in the GST. And if he says I will not participate, he is going to be the biggest loser. So it's become like a must. Like you brush your teeth in the morning, GST is a part and parcel of our life for the rest of our life in retail. So first is that acceptance. In spite of the fact that GST was being talked about for years, most people will start preparing once the regulation comes in and once the inspector comes into your office. No, so I'm saying get ready for it, number one. Number two is because GST will impact your profit, because it subsumes the earlier taxes, okay, it will become complicated to use and be part of GST without technology. So you be prepared with technology to ensure that you are able to take benefit of the GST. That's the second. The third is many of our friends could be doing partly white and partly black. Okay, I think they have to get prepared to make everything straight, because this is going to be more painful if they have to organize, because this is the whole thinking. I think they have to change the thinking. I mean, not maybe 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, this will definitely happen. So overall, I think there will be a very, very good change for the retailers. My concern here is, as of today, we still don't know whether it is 1 GST, 2 GST. We don't know where the price band is, which part of the tax that you will fall in as a product category. And the third is we don't know what will not be subsumed, because there are lots of talks happening around. OCTRA will not happen, CST will not happen, but countervailing duties will happen. So I think the clarity is important. Lastly, I would say from a government point of view, getting the government technology ready is not good enough. You need to ensure that the ecosystem is technology enabled. Otherwise, there will be a serious issue. You may say that, okay, a large number of retailers will not come into it because there are 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs, 50 lakhs, but that's 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs of today. You want them to grow, so they'll become 1 crore of tomorrow. And tomorrow is not far off. In India, it's 3 to 5 years' time. So I would strongly urge the government that there should be incentives for smaller SMEs to adopt technology so that they can be part of the GST ecosystem. It's good for the country. It's very good for the retailers.
On that note, completely out of time on part 1 of a special conversation with B.S. Nagesh, the non-executive vice chairman of Shoppers Stop. But we will bring you part 2. Do stay tuned. In the meantime, if you have any advice or any comments or feedback for us, do write in at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT or call us on that number you see on your screens.